there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about Excalibur, John Boorman's epic story of the Arthurian legends. Now the Arthurian legends is, there's been plenty of adaptations, but the funny thing about it is, now I've already covered this in another video, all the really good ones came in within 5 years of each other. Basically from Holy Grail, there was Lancelot de Lac and there was Excalibur. Those were the three great King Arthur movies. Like, Holy Grail takes a mickey at the whole thing, but it's wonderful. Lancelot de Lac is like the kind of the anti-romantic King Arthur story, and it's wonderful in its own way. It's very different from this, but I did a video on it. It's in my back catalogue. I wish you'd go and see it. This one, the romantic version, but it's not romantic in a sappy way. It's romantic in a way of the romance of the idea, the romance of what can be and what the myths are. It's, I mean, in the human level it's pretty tragic, but it really goes to the romantic sense of what human beings are capable of, both good and bad, and what humanity could possibly be if they get out their own way. So it's based on the myths of King Arthur. It's been crunched down to 2 hours 20 minutes, and every second of this film is full of instant twists. Really is. You barely get a chance to breathe. And originally apparently it was a 3-hour cut and they cut it down to 220 just for the distributors. And normally when that happens, a film usually fails because usually it loses what it needs. But this film, it just seems to be crunched to the basics, to the essence of what it has to be. And because it's episodic, so as long as the stories come together, it's still potent. And Boorman just uses the thing of having to get down 2 hours 20 to really just get to the basics, to the essence, to everything that he really wants to say about King Arthur, because Boorman wanted to do this film for like 20 years before he did it. It was just a passion project to do the Arthurian legends, and he finally got to do it, and this was the one passion project that wasn't a disaster. I mean, a lot of time, if a director wants to do a film for so long, sometimes it's a disaster because they've stewed for so long about it that they've run out of inspiration. But this one, he was ready to make it by the time it was filmed. I mean, this was a film made after Exorcist II: The Heretic, which was a notorious disaster, so he had problems getting this film made. Orion put the money up for it. It wasn't the biggest budget film, it wasn't a low budget film either, but he shot a lot of it in Ireland, near where he lived, because he lived near all these trees, so he knew the location, so he could bring people in, adjust what he knew in Ireland, and he could create this epic film. So he could create the different seasons, he could create the highs of Camelot and the lows of the Search for the Grail. It was just, he just knew what his location was, and so he could schedule it so that he could shoot the scenes of joy in summer, and then we get to winter, he could shoot all the scenes where things were going wrong. So he understood what he had and he worked with it. The film itself is just wonderful. I mean, the acting is very earnest. It's not meant to be a nuanced set of performances. The characterization are basic a lot of the time because they have to be broad, because you're only getting cut into the character at certain periods of their lives, and you're not going to get the full nuance of what they were like and having casual conversations and things. It's like it's jumping years between setups, like every 10-15 minutes, so you're not going to get the broad side of the story rather than the small details. But that works because the actors know the pitch they have to take. They know where they can actually put some humanity into it, and they really grab that, so that every time you get those human moments, it really delivers, because the actors are having to be broad a lot of the time. Not like hammy broad, they're just broad in performance. Like, they have to cover a lot, so they know sometimes that there's nuances that they have to suggest rather than have a couple of scenes to explain it. But they're all up for it and all know what they're doing. But so the film starts at Uther Pendragon, or my mouth's blown blah. Uther, the father of Arthur, he is the person trying to bring the lands together and he has Merlin at his side, because Merlin thinks Uther could be the guy that could bring all these tribes of warlords together to create one king that will unite the land and create a system of justice, a system of laws that will bring the land together in peace. It turns out Uther has too much lust in his loins, and after he's created peace, he suddenly gets the urge to sleep with the wife of his biggest enemy, who he's made peace with. The enemy sees this, and a war begins between both of them. Uther gets Merlin to use magic so he can seduce the wife into thinking he's her husband, and at that point Arthur is conceived. So that's the suggestion is human frailty that creates the myth, and throughout the film Merlin's got a lot of plans, and human beings and their lusts always get in the way, but sometimes it's a good way, sometimes it's a bad way. It's just it makes it more complicated. It's just that there's no simple way to do this. You've got your plans, but life can, or human beings' motivations can twist it in weird ways that he just never expects, and it's good and bad for him. In this case, because he realised that Uther is not the guy who can unite the land. Uther is too much of a brute. He's too, even though he wants to do that, he's just not the character to do that. But he perceives that the son could be, so what he does is he says, I'll do this as long as I get the child once you're finished. Uther agrees, and then once the baby is born, Merlin comes, takes the baby away, and Uther is killed in some skirmish after he tries to go back after Merlin to get his baby back. So at that point, one of the first things that happen against Merlin's idea, basically Uther says, if I can't have Excalibur, Excalibur's the magic sword, the sword that came from the beginning of time, and there's so much power, and it's the power of the king, only the king can wield it. He puts it into the stone, the iconic sword in stone, and says no one can have the sword but me. And Merlin sees that the only person who can take the sword is Arthur, his son. So when you jump 20 years while Arthur grows up, and he's a squire to this lord. So Merlin's put him into the care of someone who's decent and isn't power hungry, who can give Arthur the actual decency and the upbringing that will make Arthur a decent man, who will make Arthur a caring man. So when Arthur comes back into the story, all these lords are trying to pull the sword from the stone, and no one can do it. And then at a certain point Arthur is looking for a sword for his brother, and he's beside the sword and stone, and the power from the sword comes to him, and he pulls the sword out. And that's another great moment, because it's just the sound and the look of his eyes as he sees this thing calling to him. It's very simple, but if you try to explain it, it wouldn't work. But if you just do it, it works. That's what the film's great at. It just does things and says, this is the power of the story, this is the power of the myth. That you don't need lots of explanation, you just need the simplicity of it. That's what Boorman's great at, once he's got a story with simplicity. I mean, point blank had simplicity of, I need the money, and they could bring every other theme around that. Deliverance and man of the city stuck in backwaters. Simple. Something like Exodus 2 is so complicated that you couldn't get to that simplicity of the idea. Here in Excalibur, he had the simplicity of the idea. So Arthur pulls the sword from the stone, he becomes a king, he has to unite the different lords, some of them who don't believe he should be king because he's just a boy who doesn't know anything. But again, as the sword seems to command people, and no one else can wield it but Arthur, the power of the sword actually makes people fall into line and follow Arthur, and they realise he is the king, he's the son of Uther, he has to be the king. So the different warlords all fall under Arthur's command, basically. And he proves himself to be a good warrior who fights the other warlords who don't fall into his line, and they all fall into line under Arthur. But he also is starting bringing laws to them. Laws of decency, laws of what knights should be doing. They shouldn't be killing each other, they should be building a society that actually helps the people, that looks into science, that looks into the nature of the world and to try and figure out what's going on with the world. He's the guy with the big idea, and he has the power of the sword and the power of the magic behind him, and he brings all the soldiers become loyal to him because they realise he's a view of the world that actually can make the world better. Instead of everyone fighting each other, which you get for the first third of the movie, basically you've got fight after fight and it's done brutally, and that's all these men know. And they'll want something more than that, but they haven't been educated enough into how do you get that. And Arthur's the first king that comes along and says, no, that's the wrong way. Yeah, we have to fight the evil, but we have to actually grasp there's something greater beyond that, that we have to, like, have families, have connections with each other. We have to support the people and allow them to farm and allow them to grow into what they should be. We can't really pick on people, we actually need to have a system of laws. So that's the first half of the movie, is Arthur brings law to the land, and he meets Guinevere and he falls in love with Guinevere. He meets Lancelot and has to fight him, and he and their interactions where Lancelot sees Arthur as a flawed person but who has a greater plan, and he's someone worthy of Lancelot following, and Lancelot's the greatest knight in the land, and Lancelot can combine all the rabble into one cohesive unit, and he can be the sword for Arthur's dreams of what should be of the land. So they became a great twosome for focusing the land. And you get these great sequences of like flames in the hills and people making speeches and deciding to create a round table so that people can actually see that even though Arthur's a king, everyone has a place. It's not just about Arthur, it's about everyone. And how he builds Camelot to be the shining signal. Camelot's done a very shining castle. It's a shining signal to everybody of what could be, what human beings should be directing towards, rather than fighting for little bits of land. So that's the first half of the movie, as you see that. But within that, you start to see some doubt. You see this Arthur's sister, Morgana, who was or his half sister, who was the daughter of the slain warlord that Uther basically killed and took his wife. She wants revenge on Arthur, her half brother, because she just thinks that this is intolerable, because Arthur's usurped everything her father should have had and her mother should have had. There's that. There's also the idea that Lancelot and Guinevere have an affection for each other that they can't control and are trying to control, and it becomes the rot within the land. And within these stories where Morgana starts to twist everything, we see the introduction of Percival, who's the most pure knight, the guy who believes in the knights more than any knights ever could, because he saw as a kid, saw the knights come from the land and create order, and he wants to be part of that. Even though the knights themselves are very compromised and very difficult figures, he sees the beauty of it all. So you see these situations develop, like Lancelot's the one who finds Percival and he's the one who brings him up. Percival's the one who will defend Guinevere's honour against the slights of other soldiers other knights who are now getting torn apart because Lancelot will not return to Camelot because of Guinevere, and that causes tension. Arthur can't protect his wife because he's king, and Percival's a guy who'll come up and protect him, even though Lancelot finally comes back and does it himself. So it creates this thing in the middle of this beautiful landscape. There's these like dragons of these images of dragons all over the place. There's beautiful. It's nature and society intermingled, because a lot of stuff takes place in nature. It's like they're half nature, half technocrats now, and they're building towards the future, but the rot in the system, or the rot of human desire, is always going to be there. And eventually Arthur can't take it anymore, the idea that his wife's in love with his best friend. It becomes the thing that drives him. It's all done visually. I mean, there's not many. I mean, this takes like 20 minutes really in the film, and there's not really any like big confrontation scenes. It's much more people being resigned to the idea of this is a problem. It's a problem for everybody, and no one knows how to sort it. And they actually play it that way rather than big duels or something. And actually works so much better because there's no villain. It's just the way life is. Life kind of twists the plans of Arthur and twists the plans of Merlin. Merlin starts to realise he's no longer needed, and Arthur's starting to realise he doesn't have an heir. He's done all this great stuff, but he's losing his wife to his best friend, and he's human as well, and he just doesn't know how to take it. As the story goes on, Arthur finds Lancelot and Guinevere together at some point. He puts the sword between them, and then he's seduced by his sister while he's at his lowest. So he thinks it's Guinevere coming back to him. She gets to see Arthur's left bereft, and for 20 years, basically the land, because the idea was the land, kind of land of one. So when Arthur's at his best, the land becomes great. When Arthur's at his worst and depressed, the land becomes deadened. And because of the actions, Lancelot disappears into the landscape. Guinevere goes to a nunnery. Arthur is left alone in Camelot, which is sort of like a ghost town at this point. And the knights go after the Grail, the Holy Grail, hoping the Holy Grail will bring life back to the whole kingdom. And that's a big part of the story. As the bastard son grows into adulthood, these knights are getting killed one by Morgana and her troops. Either they yield to Morgana or they're killed basically. And they keep looking for the Grail as Arthur slowly dies in Camelot. And the people who were once behind him, who once saw the hope of the future, are now forced to live a life of starvation. People like children are dying of starvation. Lancelot becomes a preacher, and to deal with his own guilt, he's blaming Arthur and all the knights for the sin of the people. I mean, the people brought this upon them, which they did, but he's not facing up to his own responsibility of that. Eventually Percival, the only person who's pure in the story, is the one that finally goes through 20 years of hell and finally finds the Grail and brings it back to Arthur. And he's the one who discovers what was lost, which is the kind of land of one. He gives Arthur the Grail, Arthur's reborn, and then finally he goes to fight his son and Morgana under terrible odds. Lancelot comes back and they all finally destroy the evil. Of course, Lancelot's killed, Arthur's killed, and Percival has to give the sword back to the Lady of the Lake as Arthur dies. And the whole point of it is Arthur is not meant to live a man's life, he's meant to be stuff of legend. And his life is meant to be a story to be told almost, to give people hope for what could be, for the return of a king eventually, who would be Arthur, who would be, or someone like Arthur, who would bring the land back up to give another shot and try and succeed this time. So the idea, I mean, the whole thing of the film is it's about the myth of a great king and what does it mean to people. How does human frailty mean to your great plans? Why the frailty actually is the important part, because it creates dynamism. Because any system, like Arthur rises, brings this king together over like 15 years and creates something that's amazing. But it can never last because people are flawed, people are destructive, no one's happy with status quo. So it's always going to fail. And Arthur's life is about the legend. Arthur's life's about what comes from that. The legend of Arthur, the flawed king who brings this sad tale to myth, and whose legend will create this myth of Excalibur, of the sword, of what could possibly be an idea of fighting and developing a kingdom to be something more than just barbarism and murder, to actually have higher goals, to actually fight towards that rather than just falling back into barbarism. So that's the romance of the film. It's a romance of a human nature fighting over its own more baser instincts. And that's the film's about, this sense of romanticism about human nature, despite all its horrible flaws. Because no matter how many times Merlin tries to focus human beings in a way that he thinks is best for them, they'll never follow his instructions. They'll always screw up somehow. And it just frustrates them. And the thing in the movie is, yeah, sometimes it's a problem, but also it's the solution, because human beings also do some great stuff. They make mistakes, but they also do some great stuff, and the way they move with history also creates the life that it needs to keep moving forward. So all the flaws become something else, become something, so either something to learn from or something to build from. So even at the worst, they are creating something that will move forward. Even at the worst, there is going to be hope for this myth of King Arthur, this story of King Arthur that once lived. He had this responsibility because he was tied to the land, and he was the person who was directing basically humanity towards a greater future. Even if it failed, even if it was flawed by human nature, it was still something that would create something greater later. So that's a wonderful film. That's a beautiful film. The colour schemes are amazing. It goes from like the darkness of battle to the heights of the Camelot. Camelot's never done as good as this. Camelot looks amazing. That's a place we really want to visit, Camelot, in this film. And also the depths of the search of the Grail, the depths of the people starving. It's done amazingly. I mean, there's lots of lines that could have come across as cheesy, but they come across as epic because of the score, the way the actors understand how they have to be delivered. Every scene, I mean, it's really, I watched it in PSVR, and so it's basically been projected in front of you, and every scene is packed full of stuff, so you end up feeling after 2.5 hours you're watching an epic 5-hour film, because it's so exhausting, but brilliantly exhausting. It's so stunning and romantic and hopeful despite all the flaws of humans. So this is an amazing film. This is one of my favourite films, you probably have guessed. And I can't recommend it enough. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back soon with another one.